And our next guest, Brad Feinberg, you see him on NBC Sports Philadelphia. He's their betting expert, betting insider. Brad, I would imagine that you're a little jealous that we are here in the confines of the Bally's book right now. This place is awesome. How are you?
I'm good, and yes, I am jealous. But I actually may be there later today, so I may not be as jealous as you think. Because I actually think I may be. I think I'm actually going to be on my way there after later on tonight.
All right. Well, we are sitting right here in front of one, two, three, about 8 screens, and these things are gigantic. And a lot of people are going to be filling this place up, and they're going to be wanting to hear a little insight. And I guess obviously, let me get your insight first on Week 1. As a betting insider, and how do you tell the listeners to kind of handle Week 1, especially like after what we saw last night? The Bears are a favorite. A lot of people, the three of us, all went under last night. We're happy about that. Jeff was smart enough to go Packers. Ryan and I like the Bears. But what is your advice for Week 1 bettors?
One thing, it's a good question. One thing that I've noticed throughout time is usually it takes offenses longer to catch up than defenses. And it's funny, one of the guys I work with at NBC is Barrett Brooks, who played in the NFL for a long time. And my data always would show that unders traditionally work more early in the first Week 1 and Week 2. And then usually Week 3, you start betting the overs because usually the offenses catch up. Usually there's an adjustment and unders come down. I go, why is it that these games are lower scoring in Week 1? And he explained it to me. He's like, it's like being on offense is more like everything has to be perfectly in sync. Like on defense, you can kind of freelance more and things can kind of just work more individually. But in offense, it's like a concert. Everything has to go with each other, and it usually just takes time to get that down in a game situation. And so I would say that one of the things I do think is potentially a good thing to look at is potentially looking unders on some plays. One of the games I liked this week that fit that bill was Pittsburgh, New England. I took under 50. I think it's still 49.5, close enough. That is a game where I think we have a New England team that is really going to be focused on running the ball this year. I don't think that they're going to be passing the way they passed in the past. I think we're going to see a lot of Sony Michel. And Pittsburgh also, I don't think they're going to be as passing ball as much as they did last year. They more or less led the league in attempts, and I think that's going to be a little bit lower this year, losing Antonio Brown. And I think both those teams actually have underrated defenses. And I see it's one of the highest totals on the game. I believe the only totals that are higher are the Monday night game with Houston and New Orleans. And I think the other one was Jacksonville, Kansas City. So I think it was like third highest total. But when I saw that game, I didn't think of that game as necessarily going to be a high-scoring game at all. So that was actually one of my better plays for the week was under in that game.
Now, Brad, I know the guys want to get into some games and stuff, but you said something that perked my ears up real quick, and I don't even know how you answer this question, but I want to throw it at you. You said 49.5 or 50, half close enough. At what point or when does that half change your mind?
47 would definitely be a number that would change my mind. 47 is theoretically 5 touchdowns and 4 field goals, 35 plus 12, 47. 50 versus 49.5, again, can it land? You can get a 30 to 20 game. You can get 34-16 game, 37-30. There are numbers, but I'm very keen on like numbers like in football over-unders. 44 is a very big number for me. 41, 37, 47. 50 is not one of the strong numbers for me. It's kind of like, in the NFL, if the game is 5, let's take, for example, Cleveland, Tennessee. If you had to lay 5.5 and like someone you respect says, I like Tennessee plus 5.5, now the line's down to 5, I would still take Tennessee and I'd be able to sleep at night. If someone said they like Cleveland minus 5 and it's up to 5.5, that number's not going to scare me. But in totals, again, 37 is a huge one, 47 is a huge one, 41 is a very big one. And then when we look on sides, obviously 3 is king. That's like in craps when you roll like a 7. The 3 is like that. It is such an incredibly important number that can't be overstated. And 7's a huge number. 10, 6 is a big number. So there's certain numbers that you look at, and you can go to. These are things that you guys can just look up. If you go to Google and say the percentage on every game landing on a certain number, you can see what that is and how important how important it is to get on or off that number.
Hey, Brad, Jeff Mosher. Wanted to talk
Jeff.
about how's it going? The Eagles-Washington game, and based on what you said about Week 1 and Week 2 and what we saw last night, I've always felt that the Eagles were about 10 to 14 points better than Washington. And I feel like I still feel that way, but now I see maybe instead of a 35-21 game, maybe more like a 21-3 type game. So when you look at this game, how do you see the Eagles as far as the spread at 9.5? Do you think that they're good, or will that manifest, or do you think the divisionness and the closeness of these teams makes it a different complexion of a game?
Well, Jeff, it's a good question, and I laid 7.5 in this game like a few months ago, and I thought this line would settle at 10. And I think, Jeff, right now, on my screen, I'm seeing mostly if you can get a 9.5, that's actually a good fill. What I would look to do for this game right now, Jeff, I think Washington is a bottom 4 or 5 team in the NFL, and I think the Eagles are a top 5 team in the NFL. And the concern is it's week 1. Will Philadelphia be sharp? They've rested, Jeff, a lot of these guys. A lot of their players haven't played in the preseason, so there's always a little bit of nervousness about that. I also teased this game with a bunch of teams. I took them down from when it was 7.5 down to 1.5, and I still, if you can get 9.5 in a 7-point tease them down, Jeff, to less than 3, and you compare that with a lot of other games, such as Dallas, I think is a good one. Seattle is a good one. I think that's a really strong tease. One of my favorite, one of the most profitable teases in the NFL for me has been when you tease a game through the number 3 with a favorite. So if you have a favorite like Philadelphia, you can get them less than 3. I find that to be an extremely, extremely, extremely strong tease, and that's how I would look at this game at this point. I do agree with you, Jeff. I think Washington is going to struggle to score points in this game. Philadelphia has a good defense. Washington, when you look at their team, you're like, what? Who's going to catch the ball? Where's their offense going to come from? I mean, Darius Geis are probably going to rely on, but I don't see many weapons. I don't know if Jordan Reed's going to play. Not that he's even what he used to be, but this is a game where, if Washington defensively could be at least not horrible in defense, I think their problem is on the offensive side of the ball. So the only way I would look in this game is the under, and it's been bet down, Jeff. It opened at 46.5, down to 44.5. I agree with the move because I could see what you said very easily happening. I could see Washington struggling to hit double digits, and Philadelphia, if that was the case, would Philadelphia be able to score mid-30s? It could happen, but I would say the odds are against it.
Hey, Brad, it's Ryan. Thanks again for joining us. And I want to transition a little bit here because I know you like those future bets. I know you look at value there for, win totals to make the playoffs, conference winner, NFL championship, and, the list goes on and on, maybe some others that I haven't mentioned. So transitioning to the future bets, what are some things that you're seeing today that maybe has changed or stayed the same that you can give some good input on to the listeners out there?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely, Ryan. And look, a lot of these things, I look to bet these things the day the season ends. So a lot of those numbers are gone. But there's 2 bets out there where the numbers are still there that I think has like a real value to them. And look, while I think Philadelphia is going to be potentially as good as any team in the NFL, and I do believe that, I think Dallas is going to be right there with them. I think Dallas is going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year, and you could still get on them. And I actually bet this myself just 2 days ago. You could still get 28-1 on them winning the Super Bowl. I think they're going to be one of the 3 best teams in the NFC. Okay. Now, obviously, you have a problem, in the division because it easily could be the Eagles winning the division. If that's the case, it's tough for a wild card to get there. But I would rather take Dallas at 28-1. To 1 because I think those teams are going to be very close. And then the other team that I think has value still is Minnesota. I got them at 32-1 the other day also. And again, this is a team that before last year, Ryan, was considered to be in the NFC. They were the favorite. They were actually the favorite to reach the Super Bowl. They had a disappointing 8-7-1 season. But I thought that their entire lack of success stemmed from a philosophical problem in terms of how they played. I think they overly relied on Kirk Cousins as opposed to trying to make the running game more of an important thing. And they brought in Gary Kubiak, who's really helped a lot of people. Look, he won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. He won a Super Bowl at the end with Peyton Manning when Peyton Manning didn't have much left. I think he's going to really help Kirk Cousins. I think they're going to use Dalvin Cook quite a bit. And that's a team, and it has a really good defense, Ryan, that I think at 32-1, I know Green Bay got up to a great start last night, winning a road game, which is something, I also thought Chicago would win, and I was wrong. But I think Minnesota at 32-1 odds has some value. I really believe that. I think they're going to be a really good team. And I think they're going to win that division at 32-1. I think that would be worth a shot for your listeners.
All right, there you go. Brad Feinberg's giving you the advice there for Minnesota. Now, how do you determine value? Because you're bringing up value a lot in these bets and these future bets, and even for the spreads on the weekend. How do you decipher through everything and say, okay, there's value here? Because just because a team is projected to finish top 3 or whatever the case may be doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be value associated with that team when you're talking, sports betting. So how do you decipher through that?
That's a great question. It's really a great question. It's funny because I also do a lot of the DFS playing, like the daily fantasy stuff, and I had an algorithm built, okay, and people are always go, excited, how does it work? And I'm like, well, you don't understand. I go, the only way it's only as good as the information I put into it. So if I'm putting in bad information, having this crazy algorithm which I had built for me really doesn't mean anything. It's only as good as the information. So what you're saying is accurate. What I do is I put up what I think. I go through every game and I make what I would make the line. Okay, what I power rank every single team to be, and I do it again what I think. Okay, and based on what I think versus what the market is, that's how I determine if there's value. Like Minnesota, for example, I think they should be closer right now to 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. Okay, and I'm getting 32-1. To me, that has significant value because I had them at I think at around 21-1 is the number I wrote down. Okay, so if I'm getting 32-1, that obviously is value. Now, if they should be 150-1 and I'm writing 21-1, then there's no value taking 32-1. It really comes down to how you can handicap and how you can evaluate. It's only as good as your evaluations. I trust my evaluations, and that's how I've been good at this. By the way, I want to give your listeners one prop which I saw, this is better than anything I'm going to give you guys all day, all week, or all whatever. This is a bet that will win, in my opinion, 75% of the time. And when I say 75%, I don't take that lightly because
I'm listening.
Wow, I love it.
My ears
you have our attention.
Yeah, one of the I don't know if I'm allowed to mention or not mention the casino, but one of the casinos I saw had a prop on how many rushing yards Le'Veon Bell will have. Now, this prop is off significantly based on what I made the number. Le'Veon Bell has not played in 2 years, okay? Le'Veon Bell, if you read what Adam Gase has said, potentially for the first 3 games, they may put him in a timeshare with Ty Montgomery. He's going against a very good defense in Buffalo. Le'Veon Bell, in his career, averages about 73, 74 yards a game. They made his over-under 81.5. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is a bet. I would have made this about closer to 64. So this is a bet I think is about a 3 and 4 chance of winning, and I trust my number far more than that 81.5. I'm not afraid to say I'm right and they're wrong. They may win this time, but that number should not be 81.5 yards. So that is a very strong prop bet that I'm telling all your listeners out there. If you can find that 81.5, 3 out of 4 times, I think it'll cash.
Well, I got it in pen.
All right. That's Brad Feinberg, NBC Sports. You'll see his gambling insight throughout the year on NBC Sports Philadelphia, and you'll hear him right here with us from time to time on the Sports Bash as we get you ready for week number 1. Before we let you run, is there any notes out there that you want to throw out to our listeners for the Saturday games?
Oh, gosh, good question. For the Saturday games, a couple of games that I did like in college football. I liked Washington. They were laying 13.5 points against a Cal team that I do not think is very good. Cal is a pretty good defense, but offensively I consider them to be one of the worst teams in college football. And I actually think Washington really upgraded at quarterback. Now, Jake Browning was considered to be one of the better quarterbacks in Washington history. I didn't ever think that. I actually thought he was average at best and got overly hyped. And I think Eason, the replacement who came from Georgia, is a significant upgrade to this team. And I think that they are well-stocked to do well against teams that are not that good. And I think Cal is really, really bad on offense. And I thought this line should be closer to 17, and it's 13.5. So that would be a game that one of the games I think has some value to. I think Washington will win that game pretty easily, by more than 13.5.
All right, Huskies over the Bears. Brad Feinberg with us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. As everybody, Week 1 is here. Make sure you check all the lines and everything. We are at the Book at Bally's Wild Wild West. Brad, if we're still here, stop by, say hello, and appreciate you stopping on the show.
Anytime, guys. I really enjoyed it. You guys take care and have a great weekend, and good luck to everyone out there listening, and good luck on all your bets.